Welcome to Credit and Coffee. Today, I'm sharing a deeply personal account of how a cherished family business slowly crumbled, leaving me with an unexpected legacy of acceptance. The scent of sawdust and old oil, mingled with the faint, sweet perfume of my grandmother's rose bush that used to climb the back wall of the workshop, still occasionally catches me off guard, pulling me back to a time when the world felt solid, when the name on the building was more than just letters, it was a promise, a lineage, the very bedrock of our family's identity, a dream my grandfather had built with calloused hands and a vision that stretched generations. Establishing what was then a thriving carpentry and custom furniture business, a place where raw timber transformed into heirlooms, where my father learned to plane and saw before he could tie his shoes, and where I in turn spent countless afternoons, breathing in the dust and the stories, absorbing the quiet pride that permeated every beam and every finished piece, feeling the weight of that legacy settle comfortably on my young shoulders, a future already charted, a path well-worn and seemingly secure. Never once imagining that one day I would stand on its threshold, watching it all fade, watching the very air grow thin around it, the faint echoes of its once vibrant life slowly dissipating into the ether of memory. I remember the low hum of the machinery, a constant, reassuring thrum in the background of my childhood, like a heartbeat, the rhythmic whir of the bandsaw cutting through dense oak, the high-pitched shriek of the planer shaving thin curls of cedar, the gentle rasp of sandpaper smoothing rough edges, each sound a note in the symphony of creation, a testament to honest work, and the distinct aroma of freshly sawn pine and aged mahogany always filled my lungs, a smell that spoke of purpose and permanence. A perfume more precious than any store-bought fragrance, and the way my grandfather, even in his later years, his knuckles thick and scarred from decades of labor, would run his hand over a piece of unfinished oak, his eyes distant, seeing not just the wood, but the forest it came from, the rich earth it grew in, the family it would serve, the decades it would endure, perhaps even imagining the stories it would silently witness in someone's living room, that same silent reverence passing to my father. Then to me becoming an unspoken language, a shared understanding of quality and dedication that felt, in those earlier days, like an unbreakable bond, a golden thread connecting us through time and toil, through the grain of the wood itself, a heritage woven into the very fibers of our being. Our family had always had a comfortable life because of this business, never ostentatious, but stable, with a good income that allowed for modest investments, carefully chosen stocks, and a secure retirement plan for my grandparents, an example of careful financial planning that I always admired, a testament to what steady hard work and a commitment to quality could provide, a kind of quiet wealth built not on speculation, but on sweat and skill, a wealth that felt earned and deserved. A quiet dignity in knowing that our prosperity came directly from the beauty and utility we brought into the world, from the tangible objects we created with our own hands, a stark contrast to the abstract, often ephemeral wealth generated in the digital realm, a difference I would come to understand far too acutely later in life. My grandfather would often say that a good piece of furniture was an investment in itself, a physical asset that appreciated not just in monetary value, but in sentimental worth, something to be passed down, creating its own legacy, and that philosophy permeated our approach to business and personal finance, a deep-seated belief in the enduring value of tangible things, of craftsmanship, of integrity, a grounding principle that had served our family well for generations. The workshop itself was a temple of sorts, its worn wooden floors polished smooth by countless footsteps, the high ceilings adorned with a filigree of cobwebs, catching the shafts of sunlight that streamed through the tall, grimy windows, illuminating the swirling dust motes, each one a tiny particle of history, a memory waiting to be stirred, and every tool had its place, a well-oiled machine in the hands of a skilled artisan, a quiet testament to order and efficiency. A stark contrast to the chaotic financial landscapes I would later navigate, a place where the rules were clear, the effort tangible, and the outcome visible and satisfying. The transition was smooth enough when my father took over, his hands already as skilled as my grandfather's, his mind filled with a similar blend of respect for tradition and a pragmatic understanding of the changing world. And then later, when I stepped in alongside him, fresh out of a business program, brimming with new ideas and a desire to honor the past while embracing the future, seeing the potential for growth, for expanding our reach beyond the immediate town. Perhaps even into the regional market, imagining a new wing, a larger showroom, a digital presence, always with the understanding that the core, the craftsmanship, would remain unchanged, that the soul of the business, its unwavering commitment to quality, would never be sacrificed for the sake of mere profit. I felt a surge of youthful energy, a potent mix of reverence and ambition, eager to prove myself worthy of the legacy, to build upon the strong foundation, to not just maintain but to elevate, to make my own mark while still honoring the indelible imprints left by those who came before me. My father's quiet pride in my enthusiasm a constant source of motivation, his watchful eyes conveying both trust and a gentle warning to remain grounded in our core values. The early years under my guidance felt exhilarating, a fresh wave of energy breathing new life into old traditions. We invested in more modern machinery, sleek, powerful tools that could do the work of 3 men in a fraction of the time, yet still required the nuanced touch of a human hand, a technological leap that allowed us to increase efficiency without sacrificing the artistry that defined us, streamlining some of the production processes, reducing waste and turnaround times, and even dipped our toes into specialized custom installations for commercial clients, crafting bespoke reception desks for law firms, elegant cabinetry for high-end restaurants, diversifying our income streams and feeling like we were truly building on the foundation my grandfather had laid, growing the legacy rather than merely maintaining it. The hum of the new machinery, a louder, more urgent heartbeat for the revitalized business, yet still comforting in its promise of productivity and progress. My wife, bless her steady heart, was always supportive, even when my long hours meant cold dinners and missed evenings, her quiet understanding a constant solace in the often demanding rhythm of my days. She understood the passion, the commitment, the weight of the family name, the unspoken pressures that drove me, and though she wasn't directly involved in the business, she was its unseen anchor, managing our household budget with meticulous care. Her ledger entries as precise and unwavering as a master carpenter's cuts, ensuring our own personal finances remained stable even as I poured more and more energy and personal credit into the expansion, believing implicitly in the eventual returns, convinced that every sacrifice now would be repaid tenfold in the secure and thriving future of our family enterprise, a future where her tireless support would be vindicated. We talked about future plans, about the potential for passive income from our expanded operations, how the new investments in equipment would pay dividends for years to come, securing not just the business, but our family's financial future for generations. The world, however, began to shift beneath our feet, subtly at first, like a tremor far off, barely perceptible, a distant rumbling that I initially dismissed as the growing pains of a healthy economy, then growing stronger, the economic landscape changing with a speed that felt dizzying, the rise of mass-produced, cheaper furniture options from overseas, their flat-pack convenience and disposable prices undermining the very concept of handcrafted quality. The instant gratification of online retailers offering endless choices at the click of a button, bypassing the need for physical showrooms and the personal touch we prided ourselves on, the shrinking margins, all chipping away at the foundations of our specialized craft, making it harder and harder to compete, to justify the true cost of quality materials and skilled labor against the ever-present pressure of lower prices, the once solid ground beneath our workshop now feeling like quicksand, slowly, inexorably pulling us down. I remember the first time a major client, one we'd worked with for years, supplying all the custom millwork for their commercial properties, told us they had to go with a cheaper competitor, their voice laced with regret, a palpable sadness in their tone, but their decision driven by the stark realities of their own budget, by the demands of their own shareholders for ever lower costs, a cold, hard truth that echoed in the empty workshop long after they hung up. The silence after the call feeling heavier than the loudest machinery, and it was then I truly started to feel the anxiety, the creeping dread that this wasn't just a blip, a temporary downturn, but a systemic shift, a fundamental reordering of the market that threatened the very existence of businesses like ours, of the craft itself, a chilling realization that settled deep in my bones. I tried everything, cutting costs where I could without compromising quality, scrutinizing every invoice, negotiating every material order, trying to eke out every possible saving, launching a small online presence, a simple website showcasing our portfolio, hoping to capture a new audience, even exploring partnerships with interior designers and architects, but it felt like running against an invisible current, always pushing back, always stronger. My efforts feeling increasingly futile against the relentless tide of globalized commerce and changing consumer habits, the sense of being overwhelmed a constant companion. The pressure to innovate, to adapt, was immense, yet every path I explored seemed to lead back to the same insurmountable wall of price competition, the market refusing to recognize or pay for the inherent value of our craftsmanship, for the decades of inherited skill that went into every piece, for the soul we poured into our work. That's when I started listening to my friend, the one who always had his ear to the ground for the next big thing, the one who'd gotten lucky with an early tech investment, turning a modest sum into a significant windfall. His life transformed by a single prescient gamble. He spoke of diversification, of not having all our eggs in one basket, of modernizing our investment portfolio beyond just the traditional stock market, hinting at ventures that promised faster, higher returns than the slow, steady growth we were accustomed to, speaking with an intoxicating confidence, painting vivid pictures of quick profits, of leveraging new technologies. He talked about a startup in a related field, a company developing innovative materials for sustainable construction, a venture that seemed to align, at least tangentially, with our commitment to quality, and a bit about the then nascent world of cryptocurrencies, particularly Bitcoin, as a hedge against inflation and a potential source of passive income, painting a picture of a future where smart, liquid investments could secure the business even if the craft side struggled. A tantalizing vision that offered a lifeline in the gathering storm, a seductive alternative to the grinding, often disheartening reality of our traditional business. I was hesitant. My nature was always to be cautious, to manage risk, to trust intangible assets, in the solid, predictable growth of the established stock market, in the enduring value of hard work, a deeply ingrained philosophy passed down from my grandfather. But the pressure to keep the business afloat, to protect my employees, many of whom had been with us for decades, their families relying on our stability, to uphold the family name, to not be the generation that let the legacy die. It was immense, a constant hum of worry that began to overshadow everything else, eroding my natural caution, pushing me towards a desperation I had never known. My father, seeing the struggle, his own pride in the business deeply wounded by the decline, the visible strain on his face a mirror to my own internal turmoil, quietly suggested we look into alternative income, something to shore up the balance sheets, a gentle nudge that, in my mind, gave me permission to explore these riskier avenues, a tacit approval that silenced the last vestiges of my ingrained skepticism, allowing the seed of impulsive action to take root in the fertile ground of my growing despair. He didn't understand the specifics of Bitcoin or startups, but he understood the need to fight, to protect what we had, to find a way, and that was enough for me. So, against my better judgment, without truly understanding the volatile nature of these new markets, the stark difference between a solid balance sheet and a speculative digital asset, the real dangers of credit leverage, I began to divert some of the business's savings, the carefully accumulated reserves that had taken generations to build, and then, embarrassingly, some of our personal savings, the nest egg my wife and I had carefully nurtured, into these new investments. First a small stake in the materials startup, then a modest amount into a cryptocurrency fund, convinced that this was the path to salvation, a way to generate the capital needed to modernize, to innovate, to keep the legacy alive, to stem the bleeding, to prove that I was capable of steering the family ship through the storm, even if it meant venturing into uncharted and treacherous waters. I rationalized it, telling myself that diversification was key, that true risk management lay in spreading our assets, even if a portion of them felt alien and unpredictable. I became obsessed, checking the market movements on my phone every few minutes, the green spikes of hope followed by the red plunges of despair, my heart a relentless pendulum swinging between exhilaration and dread, the abstract numbers on a screen holding our family's future in their invisible grasp. I told my wife some of it, enough to explain the shifts in our budget, the sudden need for a little more frugality, the slightly longer delays in replacing a worn-out appliance, painting a picture of temporary belt-tightening for the sake of future gains, but not the full extent, not the true level of our exposure, not the deep-seated anxiety that gnawed at me every night, the constant checking of charts, the hope mixed with terror as the values fluctuated wildly, a secret debt building up. A silent weight I carried alone, fearing her disappointment, her worry, her judgment, the fragile trust we had built over years of shared life suddenly undermined by my solitary decisions, by the invisible web of lies and omissions I had woven around myself. The startup, despite its initial promise, its slick presentations and confident founders, burned through capital faster than it generated revenue, its innovative materials never quite moving beyond the prototype stage, the grand vision dissolving into a series of missed milestones and desperate funding rounds, eventually collapsing in a spectacular failure that wiped out a significant portion of our investment, leaving nothing but a trail of broken promises and empty accounts. A crushing blow that felt like a punch to the gut, leaving me reeling, trying to make sense of the sudden emptiness in our accounts, the stark reality of how quickly wealth could evaporate, the cold, hard proof that my friend, next big thing was nothing more than a mirage, a cruel trick of the light. The cryptocurrency venture fared no better. The initial gains, those fleeting moments of artificial triumph, where the digital numbers swelled and my heart soared with a false sense of vindication, quickly overshadowed by a dramatic market downturn, a sudden, brutal crash that seemed to come out of nowhere, leaving me with a fraction of what I had put in, the dream of passive income dissolving into a bitter taste of regret, the cold realization that I had gambled away not just money, but a piece of the stability I had worked so hard to maintain, a chunk of our family's security, chasing a phantom promise of easy wealth while the very foundation of our tangible business continued to crumble beneath my feet. The stress began to show, the lines on my face deepening, etched by sleepless nights and gnawing worry, my sleep growing more fitful, haunted by financial spreadsheets and flashing market charts, the once familiar comfort of our home becoming a prison of sorts, each wall a reminder of unseen debts. The mortgage payments, once easily managed, now felt like a crushing weight, a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety that permeated every corner of my existence. The constant anxiety of being house poor, despite living in a home we owned for years, a cruel irony that mocked my earlier dreams of expansion and prosperity. The walls of our apartment, once a canvas for happy memories, now seemed to press in on me, each corner a reminder of the financial tightrope I was walking, the empty cups on the kitchen counter a silent testament to the sleepless nights fueled by strong coffee and a racing mind, each forgotten crumb a symbol of the dwindling resources, the unspoken scarcity that now permeated our lives, a stark, unwelcome guest at our dinner table. My wife, perceptive as always, sensed the change, the unspoken worries that clung to me like a shroud, the distance that had grown between us, a silent chasm widening with every unshared burden, and the marital strain became undeniable, a quiet friction that wore at the edges of our once solid relationship, her questions unspoken but her concern palpable in every glance, in every quiet moment we shared. One evening, after a particularly bad day where I learned another large order had been canceled, a substantial contract that had been our last, best hope for a brief reprieve, the silence in the living room felt heavier than usual, oppressive in its weight, the muted glow of the television doing little to dispel the gloom, its bland flickering unable to distract from the gnawing fear in my gut, and I knew I couldn't carry the burden alone any longer. The weight of the secret threatening to crush me entirely. My voice was a raw whisper, raspy from days of holding back, as I finally confessed everything, the full scope of the secret debt, the disastrous investments, the dwindling business reserves, the desperate hope that had turned into crushing disappointment, laying bare the full extent of my foolishness, my misjudgment, my reckless abandonment of everything I had been taught, the raw, ugly truth tumbling out in a torrent of shame and regret, tears stinging my eyes as the words escaped me. Her initial reaction was not anger, not the explosion I had braced myself for, but a profound sadness, a look of betrayal in her eyes that cut me deeper than any harsh word could have, a quiet despair that mirrored my own, the realization that I had jeopardized our future, not out of malice, but out of a misguided attempt to save something that was perhaps already beyond saving, an attempt born of fear and pride rather than wisdom. We talked for hours, the conversation punctuated by the chilling wind rattling the window panes, its mournful howl seeming to echo the desolation in my heart, the chill of morning air seeping into the room, raising goosebumps on my arms, a physical manifestation of the cold, hard reality we were now facing, as we sifted through bank statements, bills, the grim numbers painting a stark picture of our precarious situation, the budget now a tightrope walk where every cent counted. Every decision laden with significant consequence, the illusion of financial security completely shattered, replaced by a stark, terrifying vulnerability. It was a long, painful night, stripping away years of carefully constructed pretenses, leaving us raw and exposed, but in that shared vulnerability, in the quiet strength of her continued presence, I felt a faint spark of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, we could find our way through this together, a new foundation built not on wealth or secrets, but on honesty and mutual support. The family business continued its slow, agonizing decline, a death by 1,000 cuts, each lost contract, each rising cost of materials, each departure of a longtime employee a new wound, their faces etched with the same blend of sadness and understanding that I felt, their whispered goodbyes a lament for a dying era, the emotional toll of a layoff extending far beyond the financial, impacting the very fabric of our small community, tearing at the ties that bound us. It wasn't just a business closing, it was a pillar of the community crumbling, a source of pride and livelihood for so many generations dissolving before our eyes, and with each closure, each final handshake, I felt a profound sense of personal failure, a burden that settled heavily on my shoulders, a feeling of having let everyone down, especially my father, whose silent grief was a constant, aching presence. The weight of supporting my own family, coupled with the increasing medical expenses for my ailing father, became an unbearable burden, forcing me to confront the harsh reality of needing a stable, immediate income, a drastic departure from the world of sawdust and custom commissions. I tried a midlife career change, seeking a new income stream, taking a job at a tech company, a complete departure from my craft, from the tangible satisfaction of wood and tools, a soul-crushing job that demanded long hours and offered little satisfaction beyond the steady salary, a bitter pill to swallow after a lifetime of passion-driven work, the sterile glow of computer screens replacing the warm glow of the workshop. The abstract world of data and code a jarring contrast to the solid reality of timber, my hands, once skilled in shaping wood, now reduced to tapping keys on a cold keyboard. The golden handcuffs felt heavy, the high salary trapping me in a life I disliked, the moral compromises I had to make in that corporate environment chafing against my ingrained sense of integrity, the pressure to conform, to sacrifice personal values for corporate metrics, gnawing at my spirit, but the crushing medical debt from an unexpected illness that befell my father, combined with the lingering student loans from my own education, left me with little choice. The immediate need for income far outweighing my longing for purpose. Every day felt like a performance, a struggle to project an image of competence and enthusiasm I didn't feel, the constant meetings and corporate jargon a foreign language that grated on my nerves, leaving me drained and hollow at the end of each day. Yet the growing piles of medical bills, the endless forms and copays, served as a stark, undeniable motivator, pushing me forward even when my spirit yearned to break free. The constant anxiety of inflation and rising costs only exacerbated our financial woes. Every trip to the supermarket a reminder of how far our money no longer stretched. The price of milk, of bread, of basic necessities climbing steadily, making our carefully crafted budget feel like a sieve, our attempts to cut back often undone by the relentless march of increasing expenses, a feeling of constantly running in place, never quite catching up. I felt the pressure of being in the sandwich generation acutely, caring for my ailing father, whose health had deteriorated further under the stress of the business's collapse, his once vibrant spirit dimmed by the weight of disappointment, and trying to secure a future for my own family, a crushing weight from both ends, a constant tug-of-war between competing needs, between the past and the future, leaving me little room to breathe in the present. There was also the quiet desperation of keeping up appearances in our affluent neighborhood, the subtle judgment from other parents at school pickup, their polite but distant smiles, the unspoken comparisons of success, of material possessions, the professional jealousy of friends whose careers had flourished, while mine had withered, a constant, low-level hum of inadequacy that reverberated through my daily interactions, each perfect lawn and gleaming car a silent testament to a life I no longer had. A standard I could no longer meet. The idea of bankruptcy loomed large, a terrifying specter, a final public admission of failure that filled me with dread, but we fought against it, trimming every expense, scrutinizing every bill, selling off assets that once held sentimental value but now represented desperately needed cash, my wife even picking up extra freelance work, her resilience a constant source of quiet strength that slowly began to mend the fissures in our relationship, forging a new, deeper understanding between us, a bond tempered by adversity, by shared sacrifice and unwavering support, a far more precious thing than any financial stability. My father passed away a few months after we finally closed the business's doors for good, his heart broken, I think, not just by illness, but by the weight of watching his father's dream, his own life's work, simply vanish, the final paperwork a blur of signatures and somber faces, the silence of the empty workshop now absolute, deafening in its finality, a tombstone to a once vibrant legacy, the echoes of machinery and laughter now replaced by a vast, echoing emptiness that amplified my grief. The inheritance he left me was not the wealth I had always associated with the family name, not the carefully nurtured portfolio of stocks or the pristine deeds to property, but rather the stark reality of the business's remaining debt, a legacy not of prosperity, but of a profound and sobering lesson in letting go, a heavy chain rather than a golden key. There was a period of intense legal wrangling, a painful financial dispute with siblings over the small remaining scraps of the business, a final bitter chapter in the story of our once united family enterprise, a conflict that further eroded the familial bonds, transforming shared history into a battleground of blame and resentment, leaving me feeling even more isolated, carrying the weight of not just the financial burden, but the fractured relationships. There was a moment standing alone in the desolate workshop, the faint outline of where the lathe used to be visible in the dust on the floor, a ghost of past industry, the smell of damp wood and memory filling my lungs, a potent cocktail of nostalgia and sorrow, when the full weight of it all descended upon me. The loss, the failure, the shattered dreams, the years of struggle, the financial ruin, the betrayal of my own judgment, the regret of following bad investment advice from a friend who meant well but understood little about my family's heritage, the complex emotions of receiving an inheritance that was more burden than blessing, the bitter taste of family discord, a final, overwhelming wave of grief and despair. I fell to my knees, not in prayer, but in surrender, tears finally streaming down my face, hot and cleansing, letting out years of silent grief and frustration, a deep primal wail that echoed in the emptiness, feeling every fiber of my being unravel, the carefully constructed facade of strength crumbling, and then slowly, meticulously, piece by piece, begin to knit itself back together, not as the man who was meant to inherit a thriving legacy, but as the man who had survived its demise. A man stripped bare of pretension, profoundly changed by the fire of loss. That day, something shifted within me, a subtle, profound change, the desperate need to hold on to the past, to fight against the inevitable, to resurrect what was clearly gone, finally replaced by a quiet acceptance, a profound understanding that some things are simply not meant to last forever, that legacies can evolve, can be redefined, and that clinging too tightly to a fading dream only causes more pain. The old dream, the legacy of accumulation, the pursuit of external validation through financial success, the endless striving for more, it was gone, and in its place, a fragile but resilient seed of a new dream began to sprout, one rooted not in what I owned, but in who I was, in what I had learned through the crucible of loss, in the quiet strength of my family, the unwavering love of my wife, the enduring value of integrity and connection. We moved to a smaller house, a conscious decision to downsize, to live within our means, to shed the unspoken pressure of keeping up appearances, of maintaining a facade of success for the world, the mortgage suddenly feeling manageable, a gentle weight rather than a crushing burden, the space feeling lighter, less burdened by expectation, by the ghosts of what might have been, a simpler, more honest dwelling that reflected our new reality, our new values. I found work as a craftsman again, but on a much smaller scale, working from a shed in our new backyard, a humble space, yet filled with the familiar, comforting scent of wood and honest labor, making custom pieces for local clients, the joy of working with my hands returning, untainted by the pressures of profit margins and market trends, the rhythmic rasp of the plane against wood a soothing balm to my soul, a tangible, real income directly from my labor. A direct exchange of skill for value that felt deeply satisfying, a true form of passive income derived from my own intrinsic abilities, not from speculative ventures. My wife and I, no longer burdened by secrets or the relentless stress of financial collapse, found our way back to each other, our love deepened by the trials we had faced, our understanding of each other more profound, our conversations more open, more honest, built on a foundation of shared vulnerability and quiet courage, our relationship now stronger, more authentic, forged in the fires of adversity. We learned to live with less, to find joy in small moments. A cup of coffee enjoyed in the morning light filtering through the kitchen window, the comforting warmth of the ceramic mug in my hands, the laughter of our child playing in the yard, its innocent sound a pure melody to my ears, the simple satisfaction of a meal cooked at home, its familiar flavors a testament to our enduring comfort, the warmth of a hand held across a table, a silent communication of love and presence, each tiny pleasure a precious gem in the fabric of our new, unpretentious life. The memory of my grandfather's dream still lingers, a gentle ghost in the periphery of my thoughts, a soft whisper of what was, but it no longer weighs me down. Instead, it serves as a reminder, a quiet lesson in the impermanence of things, the cyclical nature of life, the profound wisdom in knowing when to hold on, and more importantly, when to let go, when to surrender to the flow of life rather than fighting against its irresistible currents. I am not wealthy by conventional standards, nor am I chasing the next big investment or startup anymore. My life is simpler, quieter, filled with a different kind of richness, an understanding that true inheritance is not measured in balance sheets or market values, but in resilience, in love, in the quiet contentment found in building a life that is honest, authentic, and truly, profoundly my own, a legacy measured in moments, in peace, in the enduring strength of the human spirit. Have you ever faced a moment where a deeply held financial dream had to be let go for the sake of a deeper, more authentic life? What lesson did it teach you? Share your story and reflections in the comments below. If this narrative resonated with you, please give it a like, consider sharing it with someone who might be struggling with similar decisions, and subscribe for more stories of life's complex journeys.